Okay, go. Where we go? Good morning. Good morning. Chag Sameach. We begin with Chag Sameach. That the way you just said Chag Sameach kind of expresses it exactly. It's like Chag Sameach, but it's very, very bittersweet and tempered and whatever words you want to use. So I wanted to begin before we get to our main text. I wanted to share with you again from this volume. Okay. Rabbi Sachs has a number of pieces on Yom Ha'atzmaut, and I love this one, and I want to share with you. So it's great. It's great when you have this is kind of a remember the guy on WABC radio, like, and now you know the rest of the story. What was his name? He died.
Bob Gray.
No. Some don't know. Whatever. But this is cool. Okay. Vivian, are you making problems again? What? We didn't even get started yet.
Troublemaker.
You writing notes on an envelope? It's like my father used to do that. Okay, so this is from Future Tense, and a personal retelling of the story of the state of Israel in the words of Rabbi Sachs. Listen to this. 1871, precisely 100 years before I was born. My great-grandfather, Reb Aryeh Leib Frumkin, it's a good name to have, by the way, Frumkin. Right? That would be just your name, like Frummy Frumkin. That'd be great. Like,
Better than a lawyer who's called lawless.
You know that?
There is a term called lawless.
So okay, I shouldn't say it on the recording, but Dr. Itzik Berger, who's like a beloved member doctor. So he had a partner, he's a urologist, and he had a doctor named Dr. Seaman. Okay. I'm like, yeah, he could have picked any profession in medicine, but no, you had to pick urology. Okay, just saying. Anyway, he left his home in Kelm, Lithuania, to go live in Israel, following his father, who had done so some 20 years earlier. Imagine that, 1871 going to Israel, or what they say, then Palestine. His great-grandfather, Rabbi Sachs' great-grandfather. One of the first acts was to begin writing a book, The History of the Sages of Jerusalem, a chronicle of the continuous Jewish presence in Jerusalem since Ramban arrived there in 1265 and began reconstructing the community that had been devastated during the Crusades. So, of course, the Ramban, a major presence. So if you've ever been to the Churva synagogue in the old city, which has been rebuilt a couple of times, but in the basement of the Churva synagogue is something called the Ramban Shul. The Ramban synagogue, that's where the Ramban daven. You're talking about, yeah. Even though we have no claims to the land or anything, we were never there. In 1881, pogroms broke out in over 100 towns in Russia. In 1882, the notorious anti-Semitic May laws were enacted, sending millions of Jews into flight to the West. Something happened to my great-grandfather as a result of these experiences. Evidently, he realized that Aliyah, going to live in Israel, was no longer a matter of pilgrimage of the few, but a vital necessity for the many. He moved to one of the first agricultural settlements in a new yeshuv. It had been settled some 3 or 4 years earlier, but the original farmers had contracted malaria and left, which was not an uncommon story. They came, they tried to work the land, a lot, rocks, malaria was very popular then, apparently. Lots of malaria. I guess they didn't have the pills or I don't know, whatever. And you do with this as you may, that the Aliyah was, the line is, it's not a pilgrimage of a few, but a vital necessity for the many. Do with that what you would like. So it had some were now prepared to go back to work the land, but not to live there. It was, they believed, simply too much of a health hazard. He led the return and he built the first house there. When the settlers began to succeed in taming the land, they were attacked by local Arabs, and in 1894, he decided that it was simply too dangerous to stay, and he moved to London. Eventually, he returned and was buried there. On his gravestone, it records that he had built the very first house. A pretty cool thing to say, like a town in Israel, he built the very first house. Not yet, because then you'll say, now you know the rest of the story. It's going to drive me crazy. Don't forget that. I could hear it was always at 11:45, right before noon, that they played that segment. Paul, it'll come to me in the next paragraph, right? What fascinates me is the name the settlers gave to the village. I don't know why they decided on this particular name, but I have a guess. It was set in the Yarkon Valley, and when they discovered that it was a malarial swamp, it appeared to them as a valley of trouble. But if they knew the Hebrew Bible and they recalled a verse from the Navi Hosea, which Hashem promised to return the valley of trouble into a gateway of hope. That's the name they gave the village. Today, it's the sixth largest town in Israel. Petach Tikva,
Melabes.
Gateway of Hope.
The name was Melabes.
Was what?
מלאבס קראו לפתח תקווה לפני שקראו לפתח תקווה.
Yeah, I guess they had to call it something, right? I thought you were talking about that dessert that everybody eats in the lobby.
לא.
Oh,
Do they have to have a name? There was no houses there?
I mean, they called it something. I don't know.
כן.
Since
והיה שם,
establishment,
never mind.
yeah,
Because the Arabs were sitting on the hills, on
right.
the גבעות, and the only place that they gave the Jewish, תמיד היה נמוך, איפה שיש הביצות, ולכן הייתה מלאריה. זה הסיפור האמיתי.
Yeah.
אתה לא מכיר את השיר של אריק איינשטיין? על פתח תקווה? אני אשלח לך.
I was born in 1971, not 1871. I'm just,
לא,
Maybe
but
Eric,
it's
what do
a
I know?
known story. It's עמק המוות, everybody knows.
Amy, come up, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know the song, but I know what you're talking about, yeah. Yeah. We're having a chavruza, it's okay. So, since the establishment, Israel has done extraordinary things. It's absorbed immigrants from 103 companies, speaking 82 languages, and it's turned a desolate landscape into a place of forests and fields. It's developed cutting-edge agricultural and medical techniques and created one of the world's most advanced high-tech economies. It has produced great poets and novelists, artists and sculptors, symphony orchestras, university research institutes. It has presided over the rebirth of the great Talmudic academies destroyed in Eastern Europe during the Holocaust. Wherever in the world there is humanitarian disaster, Israel, if permitted, is one of the first to send aid. It has shared its technologies with other developing countries under immense strain. It has sustained democracy, a free press, and an independent judiciary. Had my great-grandfather seen what was achieved, he would hardly have believed it. In truth, I hardly believe it when I read Jewish history. I begin to understand what Jewish life was like when there was no Israel. For me, more than anything else, Israel is living testimony to the power of Moshe's command when he says, "Uvacharta b'chaim," choose life. We choose life. Okay, I think it's a fitting piece to share on today. And there's a section in Israel. If you go to like the southwesternmost part of Israel, okay, so there's a neighborhood. There's 3 towns that are built there, and it's called Chalutza. So Chalutza, on one side is the bottom of Gaza, on the other side is the border of Egypt. It's like the middle of. They say, how do you get to Chalutza? Sofa Olam va'az Yamina. You know, it's like you go to the end of the world and then make a right turn. There's a town there called Shlomit. There's a town there called Bnei Nitzarim, and the third one is called Naveh. Okay, but it is full on like 96 feet of sand desert. Okay, and what has happened since then is that, first of all, Bnei Nitzarim was created because there was a town in Gush Katif called Nitzarim in the Gush when the Jews used to live there before 2005, and a lot of them moved to there. There's actually one of the premier free military academies headed by Rabbi Adler is there, and one of the reasons it's so successful is because the kids can't get into trouble because there's nothing to do there. Okay, I've been there in the summer, and in the summer you cannot play outside. The kids can't play outside till about 4 o'clock. It is so bloody hot. It's the desert. And the story goes, apparently, that during peace talks, that they offered a huge swath of that land to Arafat, and he thought it was a trick because it's adjacent to Gaza. It's like, he thought, who the heck would want this? It happens to be that what they have done there, it's if you're looking for an interesting sort of way out of the way visit, I mean, I wouldn't go like now because nobody's been able to work so much, but they have some of the most sophisticated hothouses and growing facilities there. So for instance, the mayor of, I don't know if he's still the mayor, but then the mayor of Bnei Nitzarim, his name is Yedidia, he owns these tremendous greenhouses. And what do they make? They make small pineapples. Not big pineapples, small pineapples, and they export it mainly to Europe because apparently Europe on the shelves, they don't have a lot of room in their shelves, so they only want smaller fruit. That's the thing. They have an estrog farm there, an estrog grove. I held an estrog. It's like this big.
Bigger than the pineapple.
Much bigger than the big pineapple. Yeah, right. It's crazy how like they're able to, and they took literally sand, and they have created a thriving town there, but and commerce and economy, and hundreds of families moved there. It's really something. So we did actually for Gila's bat mitzvah, Gila, who's now 19 and she's in Israel right now. And so for her bat mitzvah, we sponsored, they have one day where they celebrate all those who are graduating school, like they finished 12th grade and they're going to go to Mechina or to the army. And those who are coming into first grade at the same time. Okay. And so we sponsored her bat mitzvah there. And one of the things that we brought in pizza. So the nearest like pizza place at the time was in Ofakim. It was like an hour away. Imagine an hour away from Ofakim. Okay. So the guy comes, and I have a picture of it somewhere, but a guy, you can imagine like a regular sedan with a pizza box stuffed in every possible nook and cranny of this car. Filled up the trunk, filled up the back seat, stuffed in the back window, stuffed in the front windows, and the guy brings it in. And it was such an unbelievable fun thing. But to say that like we could take literally a desert and create blossoming there, it's really something. And it's kind of a very wholesome living. And the people are like very, you know, removed from a lot of things. And there's talk about maybe extending a railway down there, I don't know, whatever, but it's really, really something. So when we talk about choosing life and choosing hope, it was there, if I'm not mistaken, I can't verify this 100%, but if you remember the famous story in October of the 4 women in the tank, you know the story?
Mhm.
So that they were based down there, like near Shlomid, and they drove up north towards where more of the action was, and they took care of business that way. So that's really, really, really something. So that's Yom HaAtzmaut. So Yom HaAtzmaut today is yards. We have to think about kind of what is Israel? What is Israel? Can you gazin somebody before they actually sneeze? I don't know. Or it's like a tokudei dibur. But we have to figure out what does Israel mean to us, and how is it, especially this year, more than other years, that obviously we need to express our appreciation, our thanksgiving, our hope, and our, of course, tikva is very, very important. Okay, so let's go to Emor, in the diary. In the diary. Not to be confused with the Shavuos holiday, which is in the dairy. Yeah, oh, I got hundreds of them, trust me. You don't want to start. Like dad jokes, you don't want. So time management. Oh boy, the first 2 words of that right there already can I see make people like break out in hives. So let me just take an informal formal poll. Who here would say that they are good with time management, and who would say that they're bad with time management, or it's a challenge? So good with time management. Who's good with time management? Yeah, I would pick you for sure.
I'm good, but it's
Yeah.
a challenge.
Okay. And bad with time management?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so there's there are many ways that as psychologists have gone through. We're all a work in progress. I'll put it to you this way, okay? Everybody has one of these, I imagine, right? Who has unread emails? How many?
Thousands.
You s-
Hundreds.
Okay, 100. See,
Nope.
I wouldn't expect you to line up in that category, but right? If I have a red notice anywhere on anything, I can't go to sleep. Like really, that I know about.
Hmm.
That's just like who
It's a comfort from it, I'm gonna be honest.
of not having to.
Mhm.
If I just
You
like
scroll, you see what's important,
Yeah,
and
right.
it's a
Yeah, that's something
prioritization.
that-
So I
yeah,
do
no,
have
okay.
good time management. It just may not be getting places on time. Maybe take that
Like
back.
you just, the things that you
I'm
are
deciding what's
never gonna read,
important.
you just delete, right?
right. Yeah.
No,
I
Like,
don't read them. I just get rid of them.
You never read.
You might come back.
I have thousands.
And if you're on, let's say if you're on Gmail, you could do a search and you could do delete all unread mail and it'll clear out your space.
Outlook does that.
Once in what, I do that, and then, you know, depending on what's going on, I just.
Okay.
Started to
Need a
a
wife.
little bit.
Okay, okay, here's this. How for those who are still driving gasoline powered vehicles, how
I'm
long
still driving.
do you wait at night?
There's a mean.
How long do you wait till you,
Thankful and
right, how long do you
thankful.
wait till you refill the tank?
Keep the lights on.
The lights on? Wow.
Beyond the,
Oh,
when the little bars and the light is on and those are gone, Daniel went to shul this morning and he's like, I'm glad I made it there.
It's like another Holocaust survivors. Fill it up. Yeah.
So you fill it up, okay, all right.
I want to.
You take
but
rolls from the
if-
Kiddush also? You take?
No.
Okay.
I want to fill it up like when it's halfway, but I never do, and I always wait till the light.
Interesting.
What does it mean? There's two sides.
Yeah?
to the world.
I'm not a risk taker. This would be my risk. I would carpool and the light's gonna come on soon. And that's like really not.
Wow, wow. See, I also like, wow, a quarter, okay. My wife, like, if it's like, now they tell you like how many miles left, she's like
Doing
she's like
carpool.
8 miles left till empty. And she's like, I can make them in Manhattan, no problem. I break out in hives. Okay, so all these things, by the way, who is always on time to an appointment?
Or early, it depends what it is.
I'm just
Or early.
I don't like early. That goes to that category.
Which time?
Many
Oh,
times.
okay.
Not
so-
here, not here.
But so there's a thing, right? Okay, so fine. Time management. Look at the rabbi says. Is more than management and larger than time. 169. This week is Parshas Emor, okay? It's more than management and larger than time. It's about life itself. Okay. God gives us one thing above all, life itself, and he gives it to us all on equal terms. However rich we are, there's still only 24 hours in a day, 7 days in a week, and a span of years that, however long, is still all too short. Whoever we are, whatever we do, whatever gifts we have, the single most important fact about our life, on which all this depends, is how we spend our time. And footnote number 1, okay, if you want to add to our, what do you call it, our Amazon affiliate link, okay. For an excellent recent book on the way it's governed by time, see Daniel Pink won The Scientific Secrets of Perfect Timing. Okay. Some people just inherently, by the way, are better at time management. Maybe it depends on how you're raised, or maybe that's just your nature. Some people, no matter how hard they try, they just can't get it together. So I think that part of it happens to be like kind of your makeup. A lot of it could be learned behavior. No question about it, I think. Training, right?
Get mine from when I was born. My father, when I was in first, second grade, my father used to say that I get to school before the custodian.
And I got to school late with my father every day. He was always 2 hours late. The helpers was notorious.
Really? Wow. And I could, like, it drives me crazy. Like, my kids are late to school because I'm not driving now. I'm like, it drives me bananas. Okay. The span of our life is 70 years, and for a strong 80 years. We say that every Shabbos in the Tehillim Tzadi. And despite the massive reduction of premature deaths in the past century, the average life expectancy around the world, according to the most recent United Nations figures, again, this is 2015, is 71.5 years. I don't know if it's the same. I imagine it hasn't changed all that much. So concludes the Tehillim. Teach us to number our days that we may get a heart of wisdom, reminding us that time management is not simply a productivity tool. It is, in fact, a spiritual exercise. Right. So, you have that great notion of like however many seconds in a day, like, imagine, you tell kids, imagine you had a bank account and every day your bank account was filled with 86,000, whatever the number is. I forgot the numbers. But you had to spend it every day, but that's a condition. But it's replenished the next day. How would you spend it? Oh, everybody, I was like, oh, Hashem gives you that many seconds every day, and you have to spend it and it's replenished the next day. I mean, it sounds kind of childish, but it's like really true and powerful. Right. And when we look back, we probably think about, we waste a lot of time. Sometimes it's like doing nothing, or sometimes involved in narishkeit, nonsense. I don't know, sometimes really, really good things. It's hard to, when we look back, you probably think like coulda, shoulda, woulda. And I see it most when somebody's going through a difficult situation, or when they incur a loss, or if there was a fractured family relationship and then the person dies, and like, oh, you coulda, shoulda, woulda, but you didn't want to. That's why it's a life exercise. So hence the following life-changing idea, which sounds simple, but isn't. Do not rely exclusively on to-do lists. Use a diary. Okay, next question. Does anybody here use a to-do list? What, aside from ShopRite, when you go on a date with your husband to ShopRite?
I mean, like in my.
That one time.
Always together.
Huh? You make a to-do list. Do you put little circles and then checks, or you just cross it out?
Occasionally I even put the-
That means we're.
Do you ever read Frog
cross
and
out
Toad,
means
the
it's
list?
done.
No.
You have to.
Add it to the list. Add it to the list.
What is it?
Frog and Toad, The Adventures of Frog and
Oh,
Toad,
the best.
and one of the stories is called The List.
Oh, really?
It is hysterical.
Add it to the list. I mean, yeah,
That's my
well,
favorite.
somebody has to keep track of all the books that we're gonna have to get to. Okay.
Is it in this
Who wants to be in charge of the list, of the book list? I think Rachel's gonna be in charge of it, and that's it, you're in charge of it, okay, yes, exactly, but you know, and maybe somebody will take on and then share with us like what was in there, okay. What about, does anybody here keep a diary?
A day-to-day diary?
Yeah.
I did in college.
You mean a diary as in like writing?
Do
Diary,
you
diary,
have
or you're
feelings?
talking about like what things I had to do?
date book.
I mean, I don't know, I don't know,
Planner?
any, it could be, let's see.
Well, diary-
No.
Diary's like
No,
lots of-
about
Yeah,
feelings.
yeah, that's what he says.
Some people refer to diary.
Use a diary, you know, I think of diary, I think of my older sister's like the one that had the little key and the lock on it.
Oh, you
Like,
better
don't-
believe it.
Don't you dare read this.
Yeah. Leather.
Look, we see it a lot now, you know, yesterday in Yom HaZikaron, that many of the soldiers, they would write these in these diaries, kind of their life goals and also like the what ifs. And a lot of those what if letters came out after they were killed, and remarkable. Last night at Yom HaZikaron, I spoke about Maoz Morel, and yesterday was, and it happens to be that yesterday there was a piece in the Times of Israel from his family that he didn't write a diary, but they pieced together some of his lists that he had and like what he wanted to do. Really, really something. And think about it, like we did a when we did with Erica one time, we did a ethical will session, which is really very powerful. Also, kind of like, do your kids know or do your grandkids know kind of like what your wishes are?
My father's a big believer in ethical wills.
Yeah, like, do you know what stuckers they want you to support, or what they want you to do this holiday a certain way? Like, do they know that? It's important to know that and to write it down and have a conversation with them, right? So he says, write a diary. The most successful people schedule their most important tasks in their diary. By the way, if you want to know about that, you should see Kevin Cruz in Secret Successful People Know About Time Management, 2017. I'm just saying, yeah, it's all there. Okay. They know that if it isn't in there, it won't get done. To-do lists are useful, but not sufficient. They remind us of what we have to do, but not when. So often you have a list, you're like, oh, shoot, I forgot this, or I forgot that.
Diary as planner.
I guess so.
A specific at 10 o'clock, this is what.
I guess so, because the diary with the entries and
So pull up.
like a data thing like that, yeah. So now, excuse me, this would be the same as like, you have a calendar, right? If you use your if you use this, your calendar thing. So I have today is Yom HaTamaut. I don't know what that means, but you have like a whole list of things like what you need to do. And by the way, I tell people in my immediate family of circle people that it's great that you put it in there, but also you should put yourself a reminder. You could set, I don't know if you could set at least 2 alarms. Remind me a day before, remind me 5 minutes before, remind me an hour before. All right. And also one of the things that we do, which is great for marriage, if you want to do this, is share the calendar so that the stronger party can remind the weaker party. I'm not going to tell you who's who in my family. But
I thought you meant to put in like the birthdays and anniversaries.
that's for sure. That's for sure.
Late night.
That's for sure. Absolutely. Okay. Like in our family, we go to the doctor, like, okay, say the children's birthdays. Okay. So that's me. I'm the children's birthday guy. Like, that's like, I know the I know the social security numbers. I know that, but and everybody has to, you have to find your own thing, but you have to help each other out. So, the to-do list failed to distinguish between what's important and what's merely urgent. They clutter the mind with trivia and distract us when we ought to be focusing on the things that matter most in the long run. That's kind of like what goes on in my mind all the time. Distracted with trivia. Only a diary connects what with when. And what applies to individuals applies to communities and cultures as a whole. That's what the Jewish calendar is all about. So you want to know where he's going with this, because Parshas Emor has a lot of the holidays in them. It's why in chapter 23 in the Parsha, it's so fundamental to the continued vitality of the Jewish people. It sets out a weekly, monthly, and yearly schedule of sacred times. This is continued and extended in Parshas Bahar to 7 and 50-year schedules. The Torah forces us to remember what contemporary culture regularly forgets. Our lives must have dedicated times when we focus on the things that give life a meaning. And because we are social animals, the most important times are the ones we share. The Jewish calendar is precisely that, a structure of shared time, okay? If you look at other cultures in the world, or they don't, think of the beauty that we have of a Shabbos, okay? For some families, it might be the only time that they get to sit down to eat dinner together. Might be, hopefully, considering who's around. There's a designated time of the year when we kind of think about where do we stand vis-a-vis God, even though we're supposed to think about it all the time, but season of repentance. There's a time when we think about our collective Jewish history and our familiar history. That's at Pesach. There's a time when we think about, well, why do we follow all these laws? Because of Shavuos. There's a time when we realize that, we were persecuted and God saved us. Well, that's every holiday, right? But, Hanukkah, Purim, things like that. That's what we have. I remember, we speak to like some of our non-Jewish friends and you ask them about their dining room. They use it twice a year, literally.
I bought chairs from somebody who told me I use them one Christmas.
Christmas, Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
That's it. Can you imagine
She had them
using?
for 5 years. She used them one Christmas.
What's even more mind-boggling, if you tell a non-Jew, very hard for non-Jews to understand this, the concept of Shabbos dinner the day after Thanksgiving. Like, what? I'm like, yeah, we do it every week. It's not right. Like, it's not right.
Let
It's not
them
it.
try a 3-day yontif. They take off 3 days from work.
And a day to prepare. Which, by the way, of course, coming up, we have 3 of them. Anyway, it's almost time. We have to repent now. It's less than 5 months. So we all need an identity, and every identity comes with a story. So we need a time when we remind ourselves of the story, where we came from, why, and who we are. Pesach, we reenact the founding moment of our people as they began the long walk to freedom. We need a moral code, an internalized satellite navigation system to guide us through the wilderness of time. That's what we celebrate on Shavuos, and we relive the moment when our ancestors stood at Har Sinai, made their covenant with God, and heard heaven declare the 10 Commandments. And by the way, so I would add to that is, of course, Yom Ha'atzmaut. Yom Ha'atzmaut is a chag to remind us that we have a homeland for our people. And right now we're in a period that more Jews live in Israel than the rest of the world combined. It would seem to be that's the number. We're pretty much there. We need a regular reminder of the brevity of life itself, and hence the need to use time wisely. That's what we do on Rosh Hashanah, as we stand before God in judgment and pray to be written in the book of life. We need a time when we confront our faults, apologize for the wrong we have done, make amends, resolve the change, and ask for forgiveness. That's the work of Yom Kippur. Now, lest we should think that, oh, that's the only time I do it, let's not make that mistake. It's just a designated time to do it, but really we should be involved in these things. You shouldn't wait till once a year to say, okay, I'm going to make amends or resolve the change. Okay, we should try and work on ourselves always. As you said, you're working on it. I believe I heard you say those words, right? And I believe you. I know you are. Do you feel like I'm picking on you?
No.
Okay, because I am. I'm just, okay. Because you're such a good daughter.
Whether picks on you or thinks that he's picking on you.
Oh, very good. Okay, that's good. We, I feel bad sometimes, like people are watching, or when they watch the recording, like, what did I miss? Like, what happened? So maybe we should have like somebody should, you want to translate? Okay, you're not doing it. Okay.
Snooze, you lose.
We need
You don't get to-
We need to remind ourselves that we're on a journey, that we are strangers and sojourners on earth, and that where we live is only a temporary dwelling. That's what we experience on Sukkot. Or as another great rabbi used to say, that, when we think about different places, it's a station, not a destination. Station, not a destination. We say that about every bar mitzvah kid. This is not the end of something. This is just a stop along the way of many somethings. And we need from time to time to step back from the ceaseless pressures of work and find the rest in which we can celebrate our blessings, renew our relationships, recover the full vigor of body and mind. That is Shabbat, right? Shabbos. So when non-Jews, at first they're in bewilderment when you explain to them how we do Shabbat. And then if they sort of try it, and some of them have tried these different types of things, there have been articles written about it. People like, oh, I'm going to put my phone away for a few hours. And they're like, wow, this is the best thing ever. Oh my God, right? And people are like, I don't know how I ever survive without Shabbat. Famous Herman Wouk. Herman Wouk, a great author who lived to, I think it was 101 when he died or something like that. He had a regular shiur that is in Palm Springs, California, that he used to run, and somebody would give it. But so my full disclosure, my favorite book of all time is The Caine Mutiny. And my father was in the Navy, and I liked the book and the movie with Humphrey Bogart as Captain Quigg, not the new one, but that was a great film. And so he wrote a book called This Is My God. And in it, he kind of goes over a lot of the basics of Judaism. If you ever have anybody who's interested in Judaism or someone who's new to Judaism, it's a very, very good, basic, well-written book. And the story they tell that revolves around the time they were doing that book is when they were producing The Winds of War. By the way, I also read those two very long books were phenomenal also. Each was, really long, but the World War II epics, The Winds of War, and the second one.
Miniseries.
They did a double miniseries. So that there was a production or was a show, I don't know what it was, but that, there was like starting on Saturday night or something, and it was like Friday afternoon, everybody's hectic before the production, and he's like, okay, I'm leaving. They're like, leaving? Like, where are you going? Shabbos. I said, don't worry, I'll be back here. I'll be back here afterwards, after, people always say after sundown. It's a little after sundown, but people always say, when is sundown? Like, you mean nightfall, but that's technical. But I'll be back after Shabbos. They're like, what? I'm going. And he left, he came back, everything was fine. And he says that when he walked in after Shabbos, they said the whole crew, they stopped and they applauded.
Mhm.
They couldn't believe that the guy who's responsible for this whole thing would actually just take off and leave. But that's what happens. That's what we do. So that's as he puts it. It's to celebrate our blessings, renew our relationships, recover the full vigor of body and mind. Right? You could take a nap on a Tuesday, but it's not the same as taking a nap on Shabbos. Right? No. Doubtless, most people, at least most reflective people, know that these things are important, but knowing is not enough. Paul Harvey, thank you.
I was just gonna tell you.
These,
I looked it up.
Ah, you asked the Google Rebbe. Okay, these are elements. This is what happens. It's like I cannot pull things as easily as I used to,
People can
and
verify your stuff now.
and I remember my father when he was this age, and he would like say that, like, oh, I think I'm getting like, I'm like, come on, what are you gonna? I'm like, now I'm thinking like, oh my God, I think I'm like, like literally, like I can't remember somebody's name or like, oh boy. So don't tell my mom, even though she's gonna watch this, that she's gonna tell me to take some sort of vitamins. But knowing is not enough. These elements of life that become real when we live them, not just when we know them. That's why they have to be in the diary, not just on a to-do list. As Alain, I don't know how to pronounce this, de Botton, or whatever, it points out in his Religion for Atheists, catchy title, we all know that it's important to mend broken relationships. But without Yom Kippur, there are psychological pressures that make us endlessly delay such mending. Okay, so you see the note in the bottom. Now, nobody wants to mend a relationship because it's a difficult conversation. It's hard, dirty, ugly work. Who wants to do it? I'd rather just ignore it. Like that's what we do with our feelings. I mean, men, we like if you have, no, just push them way down, push them way down. There's no question that I said it last week. There's no question that in the last 7 months, I'm suffering some major, deep kind of depression. There's no question about it, but we're just ignoring it for now. If we are the offended party, we may not want to show other people our hurt. It makes us look fragile and vulnerable. And if we're the offending party, it can be hard to admit our guilt, not least because we feel so guilty. As he puts it, we could be so sorry that we find ourselves incapable of saying sorry. That's a great line, right? We're so sorry that we find ourselves incapable of saying sorry. The fact that Yom Kippur exists means that there's a day in the diary in which we have to do the mending. And this is made easier by the knowledge that everyone else is doing so likewise. So in his words, it's the day itself that is making us sit here and talk about the peculiar incident 6 months ago when you lied and I blustered and you accused me of insincerity and I made you cry. An incident that neither of us can quite forget, but we can't quite mention either, which has been slowly corroding the trust and love we had once for one another. It's the day that has given us the opportunity, indeed the responsibility, to stop talking about usual business and to reopen a case we pretended to have put out of our minds. We're not satisfying ourselves, we're obeying the rules. Okay, Religion for Atheists, 2005. No, sorry, 2012. That's on page 55, 56, if you're wondering. Exactly so. We're obeying the rules. We're following the Jewish calendar, which takes many of the most important truths about our lives, and instead of putting them on a to-do list, writes them in a diary. So what happens when you don't have that diary? Contemporary Western secular society is a case study in the consequences. People no longer tell the story of the nation. Hence, national identities, especially in Europe, are among the thing of the past. One reason for the return of the far right in countries like Austria, Holland, and France. So let's just take our country, for example, and we looked at yesterday of how Israel observes Memorial Day and Independence Day versus how we observe Memorial Day and Independence
I
Day.
described it to my
And,
coworkers and I said to them, I said, I want you to, it was one of my team meetings with my team. I said, I want you to Google the siren. I said, I want you to know what it's like for people to stop their cars on a highway and stand for a minute or 2 minutes, depending upon which siren it is. And they did. I said, do it now. Like I
Right,
made them
right.
do it. They're like, wow. I said, yeah, it's not sales and stores and
Barbecues.
barbecues and a day off from work. It's.
Well, there are a fair amount of barbecues today, to be fair. So
Right.
yeah, I
Today,
get
but
that,
not
yeah.
yesterday.
But even Independence Day, how do we celebrate July 4th? Like, do we ever think about, certainly on Memorial Day, like I try to every year now for the last few years on the Shabbos of Memorial Day, I talk about a U.S. soldier, particularly Jewish U.S. soldier, because we're in shul.
Well,
So.
Peter keeps us honest.
Right. So, right. And yeah, that, and I talk about my dad but like, it's not just about like buying a mattress, even though, have you ever noticed that every mattress store has a sale every day?
It's so true.
I wanted to go to the mattress store that doesn't have a sale. I want to go to that one. But we ever think, can you name 5 soldiers? I can name you 100 Israeli soldiers that, gave their lives. I understand it's a bigger country, I obviously, but in other words, we don't sit and talk about America. Do we sit and talk about our founding fathers and they gave us freedom? And look, we could practice religion freely. I have the conversation a lot. People say, "Oh, it's 1939." I'm like, it's not 1939. It's bad, but it's not 1939 because here, if someone's going to, God forbid, do something horrible to our synagogue, the police are going to protect us. They're not going to look the other way. The army's going to protect us. The government's going to protect us. Some of them. Right, but it's not the same. Now, I'm not downplaying it. It's bad. We have our challenges, but do we appreciate it? And we let's say when people vote for candidates, they vote. They're one issue voters. Israel. I get that. But what about America? Like, you're an American. Like, be American. When we make the shiur, then I'm going to give this Shabbos in the afternoon in Pirkei Avos is, what do you do in terms of saying the prayer for the government when you disagree with the government, or like when you have a real problem, when you have, right? So like,
That's what I feel.
right? Do you feel right saying, and bless the president and the vice president, after you felt like you get stabbed in the back, like, yeah, Holocaust. Yeah, sorry, we can't let you do what you have to do. Like, whatever. But obviously we're on edge about it. But so like, how do we reconcile that with Hispala b'Shalom Shalmachos? Because it's the third parak of us this week, and it's the second Mishnah in the third parak of you have to daven for the welfare of the state. Let's say you lived in a hostile government. We're not in a hostile. Let's say you live in a place that's like downright evil. Do you pray for that government? I don't know. It's a good question. Well, you'll have to find out Shabbos after. Right? So we don't tell enough of the story. Americans, this whole people that someone who's purportedly educated on a college campus or attempting to be educated can even say the words or have a banner or a sign that says "Death to America" is insanity. It's utter sheer insanity because they don't even know what they're saying. They don't know what America is if you're going to say "Death to America." What? The queers for Palestine. Are you kidding me? Okay, I'm going to send you to Gaza and tell me what they're going to do to you there. You're going to be lynched, and who's going to save you? The IDF is the ones that are going to save you. We say that's the same as chickens for KFC, right? It's the same kind of thing. Because they don't have this conversation, right? We don't tell the story of the nation. We like to tell everything that's wrong. We don't tell, all of a sudden, everybody's like, defund the police. And all of a sudden, when they're in trouble, I need the police. Okay. People no longer share a moral code, which is why students in universities seek to ban speakers with whose views they disagree. Imagine that. When there is no shared code, there could be no reasoned argument, only the use of force. As for remembering the brevity of life, if anybody could tell me how to pronounce this name, I'll be forever in your debt. Roman, I honestly, I don't know. I don't even know this language and what's silent or not. K-R-Z-N-A-R-I-C. Reminds us, what? Google that. Reminds us that modern society is geared to distract us from death. Advertising creates a world where everyone is forever young. We shunt the elderly away in care homes, out of sight, out of mind. Death has become a topic as taboo as sex was during the Victorian era. Okay? Death. People don't like to wait. My house, we're very open about death. But that's another story. Atonement and forgiveness have been driven out of public life to be replaced by public shaming, courtesy of social media. As for Shabbat, almost everywhere in the West, the day of rest has been replaced by the sacred day of shopping, and rest itself replaced by the relentless tyranny of smartphones. Bum, bum, bum. 50 years ago, the most widespread prediction was that by now, almost everything would have been automated. The work week would be down to 20 hours, and our biggest problem would be what to do with all our leisure. Instead, most people today find themselves working harder than ever with less and less time to pursue the things that make life meaningful. As Leon Cass recently put it, people still hope to find meaning in their lives, but they're increasingly confused about what a worthy life might look like and about how they might be able to live one. That's Leon Cass, Leading a Worthy Life, Finding Meaning in Modern Times, New York Encounter Books, 2018. Okay. He also wrote a book on Kaddish, I think. If I'm not mistaken. I don't remember that. The what? Herman Wood, yeah. I mean, The Winds of War, if you like, you want a nice, good summary. If you like a World War II epic, story of this family going on, like really, and it ties into concentration camps, like really, really something. Wow. Hence the life-changing magic of the Jewish calendar. We touched on this last week a little bit also, is that we know we have the monotony of life, but you know, like, okay, we're going to break that up with a Shabbos, or we're going to break up the months of it with a Yontif. I know we said maybe why do they all have to be at once in Tishrei? Okay, but I hear that. And people think like, oh, this year we have a longer year because it was an Ibra year. It was a leap year. Chaim Kanievsky, who was the Gadol Adar, most recent Gadol Adar, and he was the son of the Steipler Gaon, Gaonatzum, and in Bnei Brak. And by the way, you should just, before I get to that, in Bnei Brak, look at the picture. It's a real thing. They made a deal in Panovich Yeshiva in Bnei Brak. One day a year, they're not Zionists by any means, but
עמוד דגל.
Yom Ha'atzmaut, they put the flag of Israel on top of the building. I saw the picture today. And every year. They made a promise. Rav Kahaneman made a promise to Ben Gurion, whatever, back in the day. But anyway, they do it. They keep their word. So the Rav Chaim Kanievsky, he said once that, and not in a bragging way, he said he had a Seder in Kol HaTorah Kula every single year. No, he had his schedule so timed out that he would learn the entire Torah, which means, obviously, all of the scripture, but Mishnah, Gemara, Rishonim, Acharonim, everything he would learn in an entire year, which, by the way, is a lot. That's a lot. So they said to him, but when do you have a chance to write Sfarim? He said, leap year. And leap year, because he had an extra month, that's when he would compose and write his Sfarim. Interesting. So the life-changing magic of the Jewish calendar. Philosophy seeks timeless truths. Judaism, by contrast, takes truths and translates them into time in the form of sacred shared moments when we experience the great truths by living them. So whatever you want to achieve, write it in the diary or it will not happen. And live by the Jewish calendar. If you want to experience, not just occasionally think about the things that give life a meaning. So here it is. Do not rely exclusively on to-do lists. Use a diary and live by the Jewish calendar to experience the things that give life a meaning. And if you've ever tried it, if you don't do that, whether it's digitally or on paper, I'm an on paper kind of guy, but then you have to actually see it. But you still have having like a weekly planner, especially one with days that had time slots or used to like morning, evening slots. But if you would say like, okay, I'm going to go, obviously 10:30 Tuesdays given. I understand that. That's set. Okay. And then I don't know, you have to Tehillim beforehand. 9:30 on Tuesday, right? Does that start 9:30? Okay, so we know that. So Tuesdays are like pretty solid. 9:15. Okay, the Tehillim are getting longer. I get that, and then you have certain things that are sort of like givens, right? And then sometimes when you have to like manage your time, it gets very challenging. See, for me, I happen to be a very regimented kind of person. You could ask anybody here in the morning minute; they could tell you exactly when I'm going to walk in the door every day. And if for some reason I don't, then they're like, "Oh, something's wrong." Like they know, like we start at 6:45 and 0 seconds is when the first bracha begins, regardless of who's in. Oh yeah, that's how we roll. But they'll tell you that by 6:41, I'm walking in the room. Okay. And sometimes when things get like thrown off kilter for me, that like creates a little bit of confusion in my life. But also part of it is part of time management is knowing how to work on the fly. Someone who can manage time well can figure out how to do that. I'm gonna just stop recording this for a second, but it was good share. I'm not cutting you off. I'm just stopping it.